Up next is our next session, which is a tete-a-tete about the future of media. Our esteemed guests for this tete-a-tete, well, they're very well-known personalities, both. Ashish Bhasin is a well-known personality in the advertising and media industry in Asia Pacific for the last 33 years. He is presently the CEO APAC and Chairman India Dentsu International. He is also a member of the Dentsu International Global Executive Team. An astute businessman, he built the Dentsu Aegis network in India from a 50-member team to a 3,000-member powerhouse. Prior to this, Ashish set up several of Lintas India's IPG businesses and successfully led Lintas India for 20 years. He also has the global role, had the global role of Executive Vice President, Low Worldwide and Asia Regional Director for Integrated Marketing. He's won a record 4 coveted South Asia Agency Head of the Year awards at Campaign Asia Pacific's Agency of the Year Awards 2015, 16, 17, and 19. And of course, numerous other awards as well. Ashish has served on most industry bodies in India like the AAAI, MRUC, Goa Fest, etc., and many more. He was also recently conferred a PhD for outstanding contribution to the advertising and media industry. Welcome, Mr. Bhasin.
Thank you.
Our second guest, of course, someone who we know definitely by face and by voice, and of course, his wonderful work that he does. A warm welcome to Rajdeep Sardesai, the senior journalist, author, and TV news presenter. His book, 2014, The Election That Changed India, is a national bestseller that has been translated into half a dozen languages. And his second book, Democracy's 11, was shortlisted by MCC Lords as the Cricket Book of the Year. His most recent book, 2019, How Modi Won India, is also a national bestseller. Currently the consulting editor and lead news anchor of the India Today Group, he has over 3 decades of journalistic experience in print and television. He was the founder editor of the IBN 18 network, which included CNN IBN, IBN 7, and IBN Lokmat. He has also worked with the Times of India for 6 years and was city editor of its Mumbai edition at the age of 26. That's some mean feat. During his long career in journalism, he has covered major national and international stories, specializing in national politics. He has won more than 50 awards for journalistic excellence, including the prestigious Padma Shri for journalism in 2008, the International Broadcasters Award for coverage of the 2002 Gujarat riots, the Ramnath Goenka Excellence in Journalism Award for 2007, and the Prem Bhatia Award for Political Journalism for his reporting on the 2019 elections. He has been the president of the Editors Guild of India and was also chosen as a global leader for tomorrow by the World Economic Forum. Welcome, Rajdeep Sardesai. Please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Suchitra. And thank you, Rotary, for inviting Ashish and me to this gathering. I want to put out a disclosure at the very outset. Ashish and I share the same school, the same house. We were in the same Red House or Brito House. So please excuse us if there is an unusual familiarity you see between Ashish and me. We are professionals in the world of advertising and journalism, but we also share the old school bond. So I wanted to put that caveat before we started off. And this is meant to be a conversation that looks at the future of the media. And I think it's an interesting time to be talking about it because we are in the age of the pandemic. And before anything else, I hope all of you stay well and stay safe because in the times we live in, health matters more than anything else. And that's a good point on which to start, Ashish, because, my sense is that I think for the longest time in this country, particularly in the media, we ignored public health. And we are suddenly waking up to the fact that we don't have enough hospital beds, we don't have enough oxygen plants, the shambolic state of our public infrastructure, especially in rural India. I was delighted just now to listen to the DM of Nandurbar and the work that he has done. And I've traveled to Nandurbar. These are parts of the country that were falling off the map. So it's required a pandemic for us to wake up to public health. And I just wonder whether that will be the shape of the future. that where at some time in the past we would only talk about politics in terms of internal battles between Congress and BJP and Sharad Pawar versus Ajit Pawar or whatever else battles were taking place, will we now put in the broader multimedia space we live in issues of public health, issues concerning the quality of life on the top of our agenda? I just wonder whether that will be the new future, Ashish.
Thanks very much, Rajdeep. First of all, I have to tell you, I'm under tremendous stress today. First, this conference has been organized, or a key player has been Mayuri, who's my wife. On top of that, I've got you, who's from the infamous or famous batch of 1981 of Campion, and Mayuri, Rajdeep, and I also happen to be from the now famous or famous 1986 batch of St. Xavier's College. So if I goof up on this one, I'm not only going to get beaten up at home, but also by my school and college group. But then I thought that, look, after all, Rajdeep, besides being a friend, is also a news anchor. And these days, anyways, you don't get a chance to talk when news anchors are talking. So that's why I got a bit relaxed. But to answer this question, Rajdeep, I definitely feel so. Out of every crisis comes out something that is good. And I think this pandemic has shaken up the national consciousness in a sense, not just in the area of health, of course, in the area of health, because that's the most immediate thing striking us. Every day you see horrifying images. It's also gone now to the world press and so on. So obviously it's going to put that, but I think what it's going to do, not just for health, but for every issue, I think the voice of people are going to become more and more important. And that, I think, is going to be the key change in the future of media. It's no longer going to be what is the agenda of the news channel or of the media channel or of the particular anchor or what they feel. It's what the people feel. And now more so, because we're living in a digital world, it's also becoming platform agnostic. The voice of the common man through social media, through immediate response and feedback, is going to force media to take up issues which are of much more national importance than what some starlet said to some other starlet, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure you as a news anchor are already seeing this. The very fact that there are so many doctors now on your panels. Earlier, we only saw politicians, or we saw film stars, or we saw, something glamorous that would get you more ratings. Today, we are seeing, I couldn't imagine we would have had such in-depth conversations with virologists and epidemiologists and doctors of such high, caliber on health issues. Similarly, tomorrow there could be another issue, and again you'll have another set of experts, but it will be what the people want and what the nation needs at that point in time, and not what popular voice wants it. And I think that's the direction the future of media is heading to.
Interesting the way you're putting it, because the way I will put it is that I think we've transitioned from the 1980s when we were growing up and our news source was largely Doordarshan. And the news pages were about news, and the editorial pages in newspapers were about comment, and there were no private news channels. I thought it was the age of plain and simple information. You were provided the 10, 12 top stories of the day, read out in a very perfunctory manner, almost as if, someone was just reading it off an auto cue, no comment by the anchor, but we, had faces like Tejeshwar Singh and Meenu and all these Salma Sultan, who were the anchors of the day, but they were providing information read out from a very, in a very Doordarshan-like style, if I may be allowed to say that. I actually have a lot of respect for that style, but that's how it was in the 80s. We then moved, I think, with private news channels coming into the fray and into what I call the age of infotainment. And then in the 21st century, as digital came across, we have clickbait journalism. Everything is in real time. Everything is, how do I sort of attract the most amount of, so from TRPs, we moved to clickbait journalism, but broadly, I thought we were still in the age of infotainment. I think from there, the pandemic is going to make us transition, I hope, in the next 10 years to what I call knowledge. We're going to move into a world where knowledge matters. How do I empower the citizen? Citizen journalism will have to be, as you said, keep in mind the viewer's concerns. I, as an anchor or the editor of a channel or editor of a newspaper, cannot alone be God. Nation wants to know, as my friend Mr. Goswami would put it, has to change to what the citizen needs to know. You see, we need to now have what the citizen needs to know from nation wants to know. And that's an important transition. The citizen needs to know what is the right treatment for coronavirus. The citizen needs to know, for example, how do I ensure cleaner air across our cities? The citizen needs to know on issues of science, technology, of education. How will I improve the quality of schools? I think these are going to be these are going to be foregrounded debates, which was not the case, let's say, even a couple of years ago, when I thought TV was moving in the direction of noise and infotainment. So I hope so. I don't know whether the advertisers will accept that. You see, my worry is that you are the guys, I keep saying, we may be the editors who are, we handle content, but you are God. Because ultimately, you are the Pied Piper who calls the tune. If advertisers don't support that kind of journalism, which is knowledge-based, or news as public service, then I don't know whether we'll make that transition. So the onus, Ashish, is in many ways on you. You're going to have to start encouraging knowledge journalism.
Rajdeep, on one level, I agree with you, but on another level, I completely disagree with you. The onus is neither on me, nor is it on you. I know anchors these days think that they know what nation wants to know, and they think that they are the voice of the nation and so on. That is completely disconnected with reality. I am not important. You, as in the advertising fraternity, is not important. You, as the people who are giving news, are also not important. In fact, we as viewers are fed up of news becoming news. We're not interested in which channel is fighting with whom, who's number one, who's number two, etc., etc. The power is now moving to the consumer, and it is only the consumer that is important. And there is one fundamental principle of advertising. So advertising is not an art, it is a commercial science, right? It is something that is commercial. As an advertiser, I will put money behind something with the hope and anticipation that if I put in 100 rupees, it's going to give me a benefit of 500 rupees in terms of more people coming to my shops or more people purchasing it, etc. So the simple fundamental principle that it follows, and sometimes it's with a lag and you can't see the correlation, is that advertising follows eyeballs. If the consumers are moving in a particular direction, if the consumers want something, you are going to be forced to give them that content, right? All this while we, as in whether it was advertisers or agencies or news channels or media houses, we were 10, 20 years ago, where we were ahead of the consumer. We were showing them that, look, this is also possible. You can also get something like breaking news. You can also get analysis and so on. I feel for the last 2 or 3 years, we are actually catching up with the consumer. The consumer has gone far ahead. They have got the news because on internet, you instantaneously get it. Equally, they've also got a huge amount of opinion on that because you put it on your Twitter timeline or somebody's Twitter timeline and you get 5,000 comments in a few minutes. So they are going to force you. Why are you getting a virologist in today? It's because you know that's what the consumer wants to know. The pandemic is a good inflection point. Sometimes you need something to sort of jolt the system. And I think this has been a very good, in that sense, it'll be a good positive jolt to the system. But this is not going to end with this. Tomorrow, for example, if the infrastructure is crumbling, there will be a voice of consumers, I hope, which is raised, which will then force you to get Larsen and Toubro in and get maybe some engineers in. Today, the flavor of the month may be the doctors because of the pandemic, but you may have to get infrastructure experts in. Day after, it may be education, and you may have to get principals of schools in. So I think the future of media is not in your hands, and news channels have to recognize it. Certainly not in the hands of advertisers either. The future of media, hopefully, by the time my children, let's say, become older, or your children and grandchildren come in, will be in the hands of people it should be, and that is the consumer. And the big facilitator in this is digital. Barkha Dutt has done such phenomenal coverage without having a news channel. And I'm not taking any names. I mean, you are one of the best anchors, and all channels are doing a tremendous job. But she didn't have a TV channel. She didn't have a newspaper. She had a equivalent of a mobile phone and got into a car and went around the country earlier in COVID-1 and now in COVID-2 as well, and has done a phenomenal job doing that. So I think that's the trend that's going to come. And the earlier some of the news channels and newspapers particularly recognize and realize this, the better it is, because I sometimes feel that they're living in a dinosaurish cocoon of their own. And yes, equally even advertisers in that sense.
I would say yes and no, because my fear is that at the end of the day, as you were candidly admitting, that it's all about eyeballs. Today the pandemic is top of the mind. A year, 2 years down the line, let's say we are in a post-pandemic world, again we could have news as noise, is my fear. Because the fact is that noise and entertainment sells. Eyeballs up to a point will watch what you call boring news in a way, or what some people will define as boring news today. But eventually, the advertiser wants excitement, drama. The viewer, let's not say the advertiser, the viewer wants excitement, drama, wants that kind of sort of tabloid. Television in particular is very tabloidish. It tends to sort of dramatize, sensationalize, replace sense with sensation. Today I may have a round table of doctors which will be watched. But if I carry on with that in a post-pandemic world, I don't know whether people will watch that doctors round table. They may go back to the sort of, putting up a Maulvi versus a Pandit. What was the kind of sort of, polarizing journalism that we were seeing over the last few years? So my fear is that if we are only going to see ourselves as viewer-led or advertiser-led, and I say viewer-led and advertiser-led, then we will never explore what I would like to think are the real stories of our times. The real stories of our times are much more complex. They require much more effort, and they will only be sort of supported by advertising if I'm getting eyeballs. If the eyeballs are not there, if let's say I go and tomorrow do a series on agriculture, where 70% of India continues to be employed, how many people will watch that? Why is it that we are unable to, for example, build a strong environmental channel? We'll be able to create niches. So maybe digital will allow us, because digital, the cost of entry is less, will allow us to create niches. But how do I convince large numbers of people across this country to watch, news you can use, as I call it? I like to call it news you can use. News that will improve the quality of your life in some way, and improve your knowledge. I mean, how do I create, for example, an Economist? The Economist has a very niche audience, but it's a very strong brand which survives on subscription because people want knowledge. And the Economist provides you high-end journalism. How do I create high-end journalism in a milieu where the advertiser and the viewer is often still chasing the lowest common denominator? That is my fear.
See, Rajdeep, I think the answer was in your question itself. One good thing that digital lets us do is that it allows us to create niches for whatever anybody wants. I think that era of where how do we decide how to do it is over. I don't think news channels or advertisers or anybody can decide what it's going to happen. There are going to be interest groups. Somebody is interested in economics, therefore an economist-like channel, and there will always be a niche for that in a country of 1.4 billion people. But what will happen is that content will become king. For somebody who's interested in economics, if you give him great content over there, he or she will be willing to pay for it, right? If you give him rubbish, they're not going to pay for it. And that, I think, has been proven time and again over a period of time out here. So I think we will have to be driven by what are the interest groups that are forming, and then try to give great content. And there is space. One thing the news channels are not realizing, and it sort of irks me sometimes, is there is space for everybody. Because we have so many, we have 800 million people watching television, right? Because of that, somebody is interested in cricket, somebody is interested in economics, somebody is interested in health. There is space for everyone. And TV perhaps is not the best medium today to provide it. Maybe digital is for smaller niches. And I think that's the way it's going to evolve. But a very important thing that needs to happen, I feel, that those who provide news, and you are one of the most responsible journalists, so this is not intended with you, but in general, those who provide news also now have to introspect, because you guys are very powerful. If Rajdeep Sardesai says something that you must take your second vaccine after 7 weeks, people wait to listen to that and actually go and follow it, right? And so the power that news has, that credibility that news has, which is unfortunately going down, is very, very, very powerful. So you guys now need to come together, and there's only maybe 10 people need to come together, maybe a body of elders or senior people, and you've got to lay down some sort of self-regulation. And here I'm not even talking about laws or rules or what violates that, that we have a social responsibility also as newsmakers, as the news people who are giving news. We need to have a certain, let's say, a lowest common multiple that is agreed, that A, we won't take pot shots at each other, we won't do unnecessary sensationalism which can lead to, you know, polarized views, etc. If that introspection doesn't happen, one of the two things will happen. Either this polarization will continue and get much worse until one day you will cause riots. Literally, I mean, some of you will just actually provoke riots on the ground, or the government will have to get in with a heavy hand, and nobody likes censorship. And then everybody will be screaming that, look, you know, freedom of speech is going away and so on. So I think it's got to be a combination of listening to what the consumer wants, giving them great content, creating maybe smaller niches and maybe on digital, and equally introspecting to see that, are we doing the right thing? We carry a social responsibility besides commercial responsibility when we're working with something like news. And I fear that one day some news channel in India literally might either trigger a riot or may trigger a mini war, the way they sometimes go on to it. I just hope it doesn't happen. I don't know what your view is. You'll probably think the other way.
Saying that, but let's be honest. So, you know, in the last several years, which was the program most watched? When you pit an Indian general with a Pakistani general, when you pit versus Muslim, this polarized journalism which we carried out in the studio was also embraced by audiences.
No, but are you an entertainment channel or are you a news channel? That's what you've got to think.
Point. As I said, we have to transition from being an infotainment channel to knowledge, to being a knowledge industry. I also agree that we have to move to niches. You see, this whole idea of a mass media has to be redefined. We have to look for mass media within specific verticals. I mean, that is the challenge that we have. How do I create new audiences? Because the fact is, otherwise, new audiences, the younger India is all on Instagram. They are all on Facebook. They are on Twitter. The way they are consuming news is also different to the way I or my parents were consuming news. We need to adjust to this new reality. And remember, and I think this is critical looking ahead, is fact-checking. Today, we have more media than ever before, but also more uninformed media or more uninformed audiences. For example, black fungus. A number of people are now saying black fungus is being caused because of excessive use or consumption of zinc. Unproven. But how are people getting this? Through WhatsApp. You see, we have this WhatsApp university almost that has been created. In this WhatsApp university, anything goes. And it's all in real time. It's all instantaneous. So you have no time to verify. So I think one of the challenges going ahead is verification. I think even advertisers have to be very careful that when you are pushing a product, I don't think you advertise for Baba Ramdev. But tomorrow, if you were advertising for Baba Ramdev and Coronil, you can't project it as a magic drug anymore. You would be doing grave injustice. You may get your, you know, he may be a very, not you, but for any advertiser, he may be a very lucrative client, as he is a prime time guest for us. He's the second biggest advertiser, remember, on news television after the government of India. But if he puts out a product saying, I've got a magic cure for corona, it's my job to verify, to fact check Ramdev. Now, that to my mind is one of the challenges going ahead, fact checking. There is far too much of information floating out there. You know, who owns media? I see these videos coming that some Christian Baptist missionaries own a particular channel, some other West Asian sort of mafia owns another channel, all of which is put out through these little WhatsApp messages, and they go viral. Now, my worry is that we therefore have to be very conscious of fact checking. So one of the opportunities in a way going ahead in the next 10 years is actually how can we create a robust body of fact checkers in this country, both in advertising and in news media. You can't get away with false advertising, and I can't get away with fake news anymore. And I think that is a huge responsibility in a way on all of us.
Absolutely, Rajdeep. That is really that. And, you know, the irony of this whole thing is that press, whether it was earlier, it was newspapers, then it became television, was an epitome of credibility. In India, particularly, everybody would say, ki writing mein kya hai, paper mein kya aaya hai, you know, look into that. So there was with journalism, with media houses, there was a huge amount of credibility that was attached. If Times of India has said something, or if India Today has said something, then it must be true, right? That was the faith that people had. Unfortunately, because of a series of events over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I think that has not only got eroded and corroded, but has actually gone to the side that they say, no, no, this has a particular leaning. Rajdeep's channel has this sort of a leaning. That's why he's saying it. Let me not listen. Arnab's channel has that sort of a reading. Let me not even listen to what he's saying. So I feel media needs to rebuild credibility. Journalism's basis is credibility. You have to provide credible news, irrespective of what's the medium, whether it is digital, whether it is newspaper, whether it is television. And that responsibility is completely upon us as an ecosystem to make sure that we are doing it. If we don't do it, I think it is just downhill. There is no space left for credible news at all in this. And again, I reiterate, my fear is that this is a space where the government is going to step in, and just now they have indirectly, with the digital acts and so on and so forth. This will get worse and worse, and we are going to head to an era of censorship. And then, frankly, you can't even blame the government, because if we don't self-regulate and don't act responsible, what choice are they left with?
No, the worry, but my only submission is, don't shoot the messenger. Has society not got more polarized? Is society also not wanting news channels or news media, or indeed digital media, whichever media, to confirm their own prejudices and biases? Let's be clear. We are a divided country.
Right. If you're only going to pander with
one minute. If I say something that you don't like, for example, because your thought process is different to mine, let's say, on a particular issue, you will immediately call me biased. For example, if I refer in any form to the Gujarat 2002 riots, you'll say, but what about 1984? What about Kashmiri Pandits? Then I will turn around and say, but I was in college in 1984. How am I to report on 1984? But I was reporting in 2002 because I was a professional journalist at the time. My point is, society has also become more prejudiced in recent times, and the news media catered to those prejudices in recent years, which is my...
Undoubtedly. I mean, it's that age-old thing, no? Do films reflect real life, or does real life reflect films in that way? But I think news media carries a social objective also. And there, I feel it should have been a little more responsible than what it has been. For example, all digital innovations, every one of them, whether it is compression, encryption, anything, has come from porn sites. That's because that's where it all started. Will you show pornography on your television? You won't. That's what millions of people want. Pornhub's biggest consumer base lies in India on that. But you won't, because you use a certain filter and say that, no, look, this is not right for the society. I won't do it. If you do it, it'll really sell, but you won't do it, right? I think that same level of consciousness you need to also now start applying. You need to help the society also it is a fractured society. There's no two ways about it. One of the things I marvel the most about you, Rajdeep, personally, and I don't usually say good things about you, is that how do you handle, the kind of tirade you get on Twitter? I mean, all of us are on Twitter. The other day, I just put a very inane comment, nothing to do with politics, people, nothing. And a bunch of idiots started saying, "Ye pata nahi blue tick kahan se aa jata hai, ye to kuch samajh to hai nahi, we don't know what he's talking, ye wo." And it hassles me. But somebody like you put in, let's say you put in that it is afternoon just now, you will get 5,000 people abusing you. That is the level of, what should I say, the polarization, like you said, that has happened in the society. But you somehow have developed a way of handling it. You don't get fazed by it. I would have jumped out of the window if I was getting that kind of stuff. Likewise, as news channels, you need to, start guiding people in the right way, I feel, in that process.
No, which is why I say the pandemic is a great opportunity. The pandemic has provided us an opportunity to course correct, to put facts and information above all else. What do people really need in these corona times? They need to feel a sense of security and stability and move away from fear to reassurances. Why are doctors now being sought after? Because they provide that kind of knowledge. Now, the only question I have and the fear I have is that, is this a temporary phase or will this last forever? Today, if somebody asked me, what would you like to do? I would love to start. And I think I told the Rotarians this a few years ago also, a good news channel. A good news channel that focused on areas like health, education, environment, to improve the quality of life. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's an opportunity in it today. Maybe it is there for the next couple of years. Can it be sustained? Is the big question. Look, the BBC is news as public service. You say BBC news service, news as a service. But that's because the BBC is paid for by the British taxpayer. You see, in India, the public service broadcaster is a government service broadcaster. Whoever is in government, it does Surya Namaskar to that person. That's the tragedy of public service broadcasting in a country as large as ours. Today, information on vaccines, this whole vaccine hesitancy, we needed a major communication campaign. And that can only happen if we see news or information as a public service. We've not seen it as a public service. We made it infotainment. Now, I am very keen to make that transition. I've been pushing for it for a long time. But ultimately, I'm just one person in an industry. You see, I just wonder whether this multimedia world in which we live in will actually embrace the concept of news as public service. Because if, as you say, consumer is king, eyeballs, we will go where the eyeballs are. Then you're also sort of in a way not taking your responsibility as an advertiser. As a responsible advertiser, you should also guide your consumer. Why should I only guide my viewer?
Rajeev, see, you have a direct connect with the consumer. We don't, right?
And that's a call-out, boss.
That's
where more power than us.
That's where your power is much more than anybody else. There are, in the end, just 5 or 7 of you who need to come together, and the whole tonality of the discourse can change. If 5 agencies come together, nothing is going to happen. Maybe some advertising will shift for a little bit from here to there. That is not going to cause a social change. But you guys are powerful. If 5 or 10 of you come together and decide this is what is good for India, this is the direction we are going to take. We will compete commercially because we are commercial organizations. No problem on that. We will have our own points of view. But these are some of the do's and some of the don'ts. And just see how quickly things will change. And people want, you said good news. People are looking for good journalism. But you're not giving them an option. No. If you give somebody sensationalism versus boredom, obviously. So even your content, which is good news content, you have to make it interesting for the audience. That doesn't mean you can't make Amchi Mati, Amchi Manse kind of programs and then say, this will work.
As interesting as possible, but if Sushant Singh Rajput's suicide is converted into a tabloid drama, where every day we are chasing cars.
So who is to blame? Who is to blame? Isn't it news channels that made it that?
No. Because
the public didn't wake up one fine day and say Sushant Singh Rajput's is a big issue. Please give us news on it. You guys created the news, right?
No. 1 minute. I have a channel or a digital channel which is at that moment doing a program. Is Riya Chakraborty a drug addict or not? Is she in some way responsible for Sushant's death or suicide or whatever? On the other side, I have a doctor's round table which is talking about black fungus, white fungus, yellow fungus. I will watch it for 10 minutes maybe, but you see, we have voyeurism. You see, journalism has to be distinguished from voyeurism. The tragedy of Indian news media's evolution over the last 2 decades has been we moved in the direction of voyeurism. Pandemic has provided us an opportunity, as I said, to course correct. My fear is it only a temporary course correction? Eventually, the nature of the beast will take over. The nature of advertising will take over, and the nature of television news in particular will take over.
Well, I am really grateful that you're giving a lot of importance to advertising, but I don't think advertising has the ability to define that. But my own view is if you continue like this, then the norm will come back to where it was, right? Unless, again, you guys agree and decide. And again, I'm saying it's only 5 or 10 of you we need to get together and say that, look, we are going to change the discourse. The discourse will not get changed. We're talking about future of media. Why don't you look at it from a positive angle? India is today capturing the world, hopefully in pharmaceuticals, in manufacturing, in IT, in everything. Why can't Indian news, you spoke about BBC, why can't Indian news channels be global? And today in a digital world, that's easily possible. I think you guys should be, you're sitting upon a billion-plus audience with great talent base, with amazing production abilities at a minuscule cost compared to rest of the world. Start looking at the future of media where you can help build India abroad. Start looking at creating a service that goes to not just Indians worldwide, but provides news to everyone in the world. Focus on those kind of things and not this, internal bickering. Yes, it'll have to be interesting content. People won't watch it, but look to the future and agree on a basic common minimum program is what I would say.
No, I think it's great if every Rotarian, for example, put 10 lakhs. every Rotarian put as corporate social responsibility. Why should media not be part of your CSR? Every Rotarian says, I am putting 10 lakhs because I want to change the way news is disseminated in the country, right? So there are thousands of you. You will have a corpus which can then be used in every Indian language. Because remember, the future as we look at is not English. The real future of this country lies beyond the English language. It lies in Hindi and the regional languages. That is where new audiences are being created in several multiples more than English. If we can do that in every language, including an Indian language called English, I think we have something to hold on to. But nobody wants to want quality media. We don't want to pay for it.
We do that, Rajdeep, through our taxes. The largest broadcaster in India is not India Today. It is still Doordarshan and still Prasar Bharati. We pay Mr. Shashi Vempati, the CEO of Prasar Bharati, and his organization is funded through our taxes. And frankly, for that part of Bharat, it does do a better job than what many of the private channels do. And I don't think anybody is ever going to put 10 lakhs each to help owners of private channels to do so. They're running a business.
Make it a trust. Make it a trust. Make it a charitable trust. That's the only way. I believe the future of media is philanthropy. I have believed for a long time the future of quality media is philanthropy. Get 100 people to put 10 lakhs each, right? You at least are starting off then. You've got to start. But if you can get 1,000 people to put 10 lakhs each, which are 1,000 Rotarians of Bombay Pier can put together 10 lakhs each, you've got something going. A trust which is transparent and which focuses on critical issues. So I'm not worried about Ashish Bhasin then giving me advertising or not. You see, even I need to...
वापस तो तुम हमारे ही पास आओगे because एक बार 10 lakhs ले लोगे, but ongoing के हमारे पास ही आना पड़ेगा. But I think with that, we're getting a signal from the organizers that we should wind this up because we're running out of time. But Rajiv, as always, it is so brilliant to listen to your views, and it's so nice to have this conversation. And I think I genuinely believe that people like you can influence the future of media in a significant way. So with that, let's hand it over.
Let me thank. I just wanted to leave that thought with Rotarians that can they in some small way contribute to a possible future trust for a better quality media. Maybe that's one of the goals that Rotary could set for themselves, even in a limited area, let's say, like providing information on the pandemic and on public health in the future.
Well, let's we could ask DG Rotarian Sunil Mehra.
Thanks, Suchitra. This was not a scheduled interjection, but I had to. But I love these two campaignites fighting with each other. And I also am a campaignite, so that's why it's a honor to be here with all of you here. And yes, a little senior. So Rajdeep, I would like to actually say thank you, and Ashish too. Both of you have given us a very interesting session here. Rajdeep, your father was very, very impressive upon me for my cricketing days when he taught me in school. And Ashish, if I have to say that if a building could stand on 3 legs, the third leg, which would be the most powerful, it has been Mayuri for this district conference. So thank you, both of you. Always a pleasure to listen to campaignites. Thank you, both of you.
Bye-bye.